Hi everyone, this is a video for those that want to work at their own pace or perhaps missed a lesson. We're going to be learning about CSS, the basics, right through to some more complex problems and solutions. So, learning CSS, this PowerPoint is on Daymap. You can have a look at this one, but we're going to go through a couple of the slides. So, we know CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, okay? So, we have a sheet, we have all of our styles listed on it, and it's cascading, meaning that our CSS file knows which styles to add for different parts of our HTML document. A CSS file cannot exist on its own though, so it must be created to support a HTML to essentially make the HTML web page look pretty. Okay. When it comes to CSS, there are three types of styles for CSS. One we have already used in our HTML, which is the inline. Okay, it's where you essentially, if you wanted to change your paragraph in HTML, you would use the style attribute and then write in this property and value, and it would then turn your paragraph text color to blue. Inline is useful to select and make sure that you definitely do want your text to be blue in that spot. However, you would then delete that inline CSS afterwards, because it is just like a check-in kind of usage. You typically then have internal CSS, which is written at the top in your head of your HTML file. Now, this can be good if you only want a small amount of CSS or styling in your HTML. However, if you had multiple web pages that you wanted to add the same or similar CSS to, this again isn't a good option, okay? The best option, and the option that we're going to go through today, is using external CSS, which is where you, in the head, create a link with this exact formatting. We don't actually use the type. This was used in older HTML versions like HTML4, but you have link, rel or relationship, which is a style sheet, and then you write your href, and then this here is going to be the actual name of your CSS file that you have named it. And then within that external file, you will then write lines of CSS on its own to, I guess, make your website look pretty. Okay. So what we need to do before we keep going in delving into CSS is we need to create our CSS file, so that then we have both an external file and we also have a HTML separate. So if you go to Daymap, somewhere there will be a class post with a bunch of code. For us in 2022 it is, in semester 1, we are going to simply go to Tuesday, the 1st of March. This first one is our HTML file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that carefully, making sure that I get all of it right down to there. I press Ctrl+C, and I'm going to go to my Sublime, because that's my chosen coding program. I have created two files here. I want you to ignore these two. These are the ones that we did as a class. I've created two files here. One of them I have named CSS cheat sheet. Now, I've added demo so that then I can create a second version for you all. But then it says .html. Okay, so this is my HTML file, so I'll paste my HTML in there. Now, the other file is CSS. So if we go back to Daymap, there is also this CSS note here that I would like you to copy. So Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, so that then we also have a CSS version as well. So I'm going to save both. Then we need to check out this link that is here. If I was at the moment to open up this HTML file in the browser, there it is there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that then I can see all three of my screens. I'm also going to hold Shift while I am selecting both of these, and then I'll be able to see both CSS and HTML at the same time. Okay, so I'm at the top of all of these documents, and at the moment this is what I'm seeing. Now, your browser document shouldn't have color or anything like that. The reason that mine, however, does is because at the moment my link version here is connected to this CSS document that I've already added stuff to. So it's what we did in class time. So for me to change this link so that then it's directly linking to this CSS document instead, I'm going to edit this name here. So I'm going to go CSS-cheat sheet-demo. Now you can name your CSS whatever you like. However, you need to make sure that whatever the name is up here, it also needs to be here. If I then save it and then refresh my page, then this is what it should be looking like again, and I'll hold Shift so that then I can see both of these things. Okay, so pause this video if you need to sort that out, and then resume when you have what I have in front of me. What we're going to do now is go back to the PowerPoint, and we're going to go through a couple of different things. The first thing that we need to go through is syntax and formatting. So the syntax looks different to the HTML code. Typically we always start with some sort of a selector in CSS. We then use what we can call curly brackets. We then have our property and our property value, or just value works, okay? And then we have another curly bracket over here, okay? Now, formatting, as far as formatting goes, this is the preferred correct formatting that most coders like us to use. You can see over here that we've got multiple declarations. So a declaration is a single line of code. We've got multiple declarations, one after the other. It would work if we were to have our declarations one line after the other, so they were all in one really long line. However, it would be really quite hard to read. So that is why typically we use this sort of formatting that you see here and here, and we need to use this syntax as well. So selector, property, value, and then our curly brackets either side. So familiarize yourself with that language. Like I said beforehand, this here is a declaration block. We also have here another word for declaration is property/value pair. This might be something that you might need to refer to as you are talking about your coding that you've created. So we were talking about every CSS code starting with a selector. Let's get into that a little bit more. So there's typically three types of selectors that you can have. They would be an element, a class, and an ID. Okay. Now, an element is the most basic of all selectors. An element is any HTML tag in your HTML document. So this could be article, so a semantic tag like this one here. We could also have P for paragraph, or A for anchor, or title, or you get the idea. Okay, so any HTML tag is an element. All right. We then have class, which is where you would have written my class equals, and then like this here, all right, and then you would have a name for your class, okay? That name, so at the moment this name is my class, appears as your selector, and you put a dot in front of it. We then have an ID, okay, which is very similar to a class, so same concept, you write ID instead of class equals, and then whatever it is that your ID name would be. Okay. Now the catch with IDs, however, is you can only use an ID the once. So one time in your CSS document, can you refer to an ID, or refer to an ID for like one area, and that is it. Okay. Just to explain these three things a little bit more. So HTML elements or tags okay, are very generic forms. So if you were to select a P, for example, and put a P as your selector, then it would select every single paragraph that is in your HTML document, which could be quite large, okay? It also has just the element name itself. There's nothing in front of that letter, okay? We then have our class. Now, our class is going to be more specific because you can name your class whatever you like. So it could be paragraph number 1, it could be body, it could be content wrapper, it could be lots of things, okay? And then you can then refer to those classes in your CSS document separately. And the other thing is it has to always have a dot in front of it if you're referring to a class. And then our ID, like we said, most specific. You can only have one per page, and it must have this hashtag in front of it, so the number symbol. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can talk about color, and then let's see if we can apply some of these things. So, if we were to apply color to our CSS document that we've got so far to give it a background color or to make the color text varied, we would use these CSS codes right here. So if I was to, for example, and you can start typing this out while I'm talking, if I was to have my heading 1 and I wanted all my headings that are number 1 to be the red color, okay, then I would write this code here. If I wanted all of my heading 2s to have a background color of lavender, then I would use this here, okay? Now, when we are referring to our colors, we have 3 options. We can either use a generic name like lavender, okay? If you actually go to this website here, which will be on Daymap on that March the 1st as well, if we come over here, we have a website that tells us a bunch of generic names, and we are able to go to whatever color it is that we think we might like to create, and then we can choose to write olive drab, for example, to get that color there, okay? The other option for selecting colors is using a hex code. I don't want to get into that too much at the moment, but if we go to this other colors website, or alternatively, if we come back over here to this one that we were just on, this hex code here, if we type that in, it will then give us the same olive drab color, supposedly. The other color code is RGB, so we could also type in these 3 sets of numbers here and it would give us the same effect. Okay, I opened this website as well. This colors website allows you to select different color schemes. So what we're able to do is press the spacebar and we get new colors, and if there's a color that we really like, we can lock it. We can also do a bunch of other things, and then we can keep searching for more colors and keep slowly locking our colors in. And then obviously we would copy this hashtag with the number symbol in front of it, and just so long as it's used in reference with a color number, a hex code, then it should work perfectly fine. So with all of that knowledge that I've just told you in mind, what I would like for you to do, I don't want that one, I want that one there. We are going to add in some styles to our global styles and our headings. We're going to change everything, and we're also going to do some changes to our headings. So global styles is something that where you are trying to impact or change everything. So it's where you might add in a font like change. It might be where you add in a typical everything color change. So for example, I'm thinking that I would really like my background color to be probably a grey, I think, like a dark grey, maybe this dim grey. So I am going to say body because we have the head and then we have the body. So I want everything that fits within that body tag. Then curly brackets, then enter. Then I'm going to say background color. Now remember, we want American spelling of background color. And then I'm going to write in dim grey without the capital letter. And then I'm wondering why it's not changing colors here. We'll keep going and we'll see what happens. And then I'm going to add in my semicolon. I'm going to press save on both, and I'm going to refresh my browser and we will see what happens. We have our grey background. Now, I also think that this text now isn't standing out as well as it could be. So I want to find quite a light colour now, maybe a white, but not a super white, maybe an off-white. You obviously choose whatever colours you want, okay? You're creating something. It doesn't have to be perfect or beautiful at this stage. It can be slightly average. Because I want to add this colour to my text within all of the body, I'm going to create a declaration block and do another declaration down. So I'm going to this time write colour, and then my colon, white smoke, and then my semicolon, and then if I save it, Control S by the way for saving, and then I've got that. My only colour that is not that white colour in the way of text is my links, and that is because links already have a default colour, which we can adjust and change as we go. Okay, now what we're going to do is come back to the PowerPoint. I strongly suggest have a play and adjust a whole bunch of different things. We saw beforehand, so remembering that these are your codes that you can use, we saw beforehand on my other version of my browser that has gone away that we have like different colors set as the backgrounds for the headings and that sort of thing as well. So what we might actually do is come down to the background, and I'm going to say heading 1, why not? And then my curly brackets, I'm going to change the background color first. And I'm going to make that I apologize if you can hear the noise that's going on in tech, everyone. I'm going to make it a really light pink, which none of these is what I thought, but that's okay. We might go with pink. And I'm going to make the color of my text maybe either a black. I don't think there's a darker grey than what I already have. I think we're just going to go black. So I've created another declaration block here. I'm going to save it. I'm going to refresh, and you can see that I've made that change there. Now, I could as well do the same thing with my paragraph number 1. I might even, because I'm doing exactly the same settings, but just with a slightly different selector, I'm going to do this. Now, so far, what I have done is I have used element selectors. Can you see if you can create some classes and IDs and also use other different sorts of selectors? So, for example, I have a selection here for my paragraphs. I might even, so that selection ends down here. I am going to go, class equals, and then I'm going to call it paragraph 1, or even just paragraph would work. And then I'm going to, over here where I copied my code, I will write dot paragraph, and then if I save it and refresh, nothing happens. Nothing happened, just a pause there. I saved this file, but I did not save my HTML file, so I've now just saved that one as well. If I now refresh, there we go, much better. So now I have this paragraph selected. Now, if I was to make these other sections, these other paragraphs, that class as well, I might do it here. And I was to save that, and that, and refresh. My paragraph 2 is not selected, it is not pink, because I have not created a class out of that. But my paragraph 3 is, as is this title for box model, because by the looks of things, I'm not sure. So we've got class selector there, we've got find more. How interesting. That's maybe something that we can look at in a second. And then finally, the last one, I'm going to create an ID selector for paragraph 2. So I will go to my selection again, and this time instead of just typing in class, it'll just be ID equals, and then same deal, quotation marks, P2 is what my ID is going to be called. I'm going to save it. I am going to do a hashtag or a number symbol and write P2, and then my curly brackets, and then background. I might even copy this. Now I'm going to make my background color a different, maybe a light blue this time, but I think I will keep my color of my font a black. So we're just going to have a look at some blue colors over here. Light cyan is perfect. Now, if you spell a color wrong at all, you will find that it won't change. So keep in mind that as well. And there we have it. That's what I've got so far. Okay. Make sure that you have a play around, okay? And then only when you feel that you have a handle on all of these different tags so far, should you be moving on. So our next step is to look at what is called descendant selectors. Now, so far I've shown you the 3 basic selectors, element, class, and ID, and you've had a play around with those. However, sometimes it can be quite difficult to select only a certain part of your HTML document that you actually want with just these 3 elements. So there are lots of other types of selectors like pseudo selectors and descendant selectors, and there's a few others as well, where the main one that I want you to concern yourself with is descendants, as well as the element, class, and ID. So a descendant is where you have 2 selectors or more, there can be more as well, that is used to narrow down your selection. Okay, so in this instance over here, what we have is 2 links in our HTML file. We have a link up the top that is inside of a paragraph, and we have a link down the bottom in our unordered list, which is inside of a list. Okay, so if I was to want to change just one of these links colors to red, but not the other, then what I would have to do is use a descendant selector. Oh, there we go. Okay, so at the moment I see my A, which is my anchor or my link tag, okay, and then within that it is a P. So if I was to say PA, okay, or AP, then it would only select this link here. Vice versa. So this link, this A anchor tag, is inside of an LI. So if I write LI and then A, it'll only select that link that is there. Now, how do you know that you compare 2 selectors together? They need to be descendants or ancestors from a HTML family tree. Now, if we look at this HTML that's here, what you'll notice is that there is a selection, okay, which is one HTML family, and then there is an aside, which is another HTML family, okay? So what that means is any of the tags that are inside of these 2 separate HTML families can be used together to support and create a descendant selector. So for example, if I wanted to select this link that is here, I could write P here, but I could also write H1 because there is a H1 within this family. I could also write all of the links within this selection because this selection is a family with the A. So this and this this is a descendant of this. This is an ancestor of the A, okay? The A is a parent of the P, okay? The other way around. The A is the child of the P is the parent. And then these things that are side by side, they're all siblings, supposedly. So we've got our different names there, okay? What I need you to be aware of is selecting things within your family tree. If we were to look at our HTML that we've got so far over here, everything that's fitting within this selection here is a family, okay? And it is further supported by the class that is there. So especially if I was to write paragraph 1 and make that a separate class, I won't do that because it will format and change my settings so far. But if I was to want to make this strong text one color, but the rest of the writing not, then what I would choose is I would start off with the S, I would start off with the strong. I would write the whole tag, not just a letter, and then I would write dot paragraph next to it. Final thing before I pause this video and keep going a little bit later. When you are reading your selectors, you need to read them from right to left, so the opposite way that you normally would. So I've been talking you through this already, but you start with the link, then you go to the paragraph, then you go to the selector. So over here, you start with the link, then the paragraph, then the selector. Okay, if you go the other way around, you won't be able to read it correctly and you'll get really confused. So start backwards and go to the right, okay? The left. I struggle with my lefts and rights. Go to the left. Yeah,